Vinay Kumar is as old as the Bhopal tragedy. Born just hours before the deadly gas crept into his parents' hut, Vinay's short life symbolises the suffering of 250,000 people in this city. His tiny body is helpless against the relentless poison which is destroying his lungs. Vinay seems destined to become just another statistic in the world's worst chemical disaster. In the hospitals and around the plant, people are asking, what is Bhopal's future? 80-year-old Shakabai wants to know if her nephew, lying in agony in the hut, will ever recover. His parents were killed by the gas. The children, orphaned by the disaster, recite their alphabet in a strange house. 7-year-old Kirin, whose parents and brother died, asks what will happen to her. She wants to go home. The authorities have not reassured people about the long-term effects of the poison. Fear is spreading throughout this community.
The answers to many of the questions surrounding this tragedy lie in this building, Bhopal's mortuary. At least 5 bodies are being brought here every day. The forensic scientists, perhaps realizing the legal significance of their discoveries, are as yet unwilling to talk publicly. But they have discovered brain damage in some of the victims. There's also the possibility of cancer, and the doctors have found traces of cyanide in some of the bodies.
If it was cyanide which contributed to the injuries and deaths, the victims could have been given an antidote. When Bhopal doctors suggested this to Union Carbide's medical team, they rejected it as inappropriate. But some doctors took the antidote themselves and were protected from the poison. No antidote was given to the victims, only treatment for their symptoms. Details of long-term medical effects have not been forthcoming from the authorities. Molecular biologist Dr. Anil Sadgopal, who organizes a victims' action group, accuses officials of hiding the truth.
There's been no attempt to give any public information. In fact, there has been all attempts to cover up, and the leading Indian scientist team, which was here, also I think has collaborated in covering up information along with Union Carbide management. Thousands of people in the affected areas are reporting serious breathlessness, various lung ailments, liver damage, kidney damage, muscle pain, continuous fever, headache, and I think there's not a single organ in the body which is not affected by the poison gas.
40 tons of lethal gas spread for miles. Little is known about the effect of MIC on the environment, but the authorities quickly announced that water and soil were not contaminated. Independent scientists are not convinced. The lake is the source of the town's drinking water. It's always been polluted, but now some scientists are afraid the cloud of MIC gas may have reacted with the water to produce nitrosamines, cancer-causing chemicals. They're worried adequate tests have not been done. Fresh produce from outside Bhopal is being sold at a premium in the markets. Families are clearing their fields of blighted vegetables. The authorities say crops are unaffected, but independent biologists are worried that MIC has damaged the plant's cell structure. Who knows what sort of crop will grow from these seeds? There's no sign of life returning to normal in the slums around the plant. These families queuing for milk exist on charity. Most of the breadwinners were labourers, earning just enough each day to eat at night. Now they're too weak to work. The relief agencies are pulling out of Bhopal. The victims may soon be forgotten. The economic life of the city has been destroyed. The price of gold has fallen to 1/10 of its normal value as people sell their jewellery to buy food. 6 years ago, one of Bhopal's chief administrators recommended the plant be moved. He was shifted. Union Carbide stayed.
There seems to be a sort of lack of credibility of government, with the result that even when the authorities are functioning, people don't trust them. And this is the real tragedy of the whole situation.
In Bhopal, people try to pick up the threads of normal life. Temples are full, offices have reopened, but how secure is the future? Alarm bells are already ringing over compensation claims. The American lawyers hold court in the best hotels in town, instructing local solicitors how to handle the multi-million-dollar claims. State authorities are offering free legal aid. They've accused the Americans of unethical behavior, saying poor illiterate slum dwellers have signed away power of attorney and pledged to pay all expenses. Some don't know who their lawyers are.
I met a widow who became a widow in this gas tragedy only the other day, who was crying and was trying to get to the local police station to obtain a duplicate copy of a death certificate. So I asked her what happened to your original. She said, oh, those white people came a few days after the tragedy and asked me to hand over the hospital discharge slip, the prescriptions, original copies, and the death certificate, and made me sign, made me put my thumb impression on a blank form which I did not know what it consisted of.
Anger is rising in Bhopal. People feel deceived by the authorities, who cannot or will not tell them what the long-term future holds. Tomorrow, a month after the disaster, thousands more are planning to march in protest, demanding to know what moral responsibility Union Carbide has.
On about the same scale as that of Nazi Germany for Buchenwald and Dachau. In fact, a total moral responsibility. They have no business to set up a plant in which they cannot ensure 100% safety. This is not the sort of thing where you're driving a railway engine and you miss a signal with the possibility that you might not have an accident. Here an accident meant instant, total death. So I think the responsibility is also total.
The gas orphans of Bhopal offer their New Year prayers, but there's likely to be little happiness in 1985. These children and thousands of other people will be affected by the tragedy for years to come, long after the world has forgotten the horror of this stricken city. Jane Corbin, ITN, Bhopal.